All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Julia Kim. I'm a project manager with the Local Government Commission, and I'll be your moderator for this webinar. And we have a lot to cover today, so let's go ahead and dive right in. And just a quick overview of today's agenda, I'll be providing a brief intro to CivicSpark for those of you who may not be familiar with the program. Then over to Michael McCormack with the Governor's Office of Planning and Research to provide a few welcoming remarks as our partner. Then on to the feature presentations, the reason why you're all here today, which will be focused on sharing outcomes, best practices, and lessons learned, with hopes that you'll find something that resonates with you and the work that you're doing in your community. As questions come up, you can type them into the questions section of the webinar control panel. After each presentation, I'll be reading the questions aloud for the speakers to answer and facilitating the Q&A process. Any questions that we don't have time to get to will be addressed after the webinar via email, and I encourage you all to reach out to the fellows directly if you have questions. So what is CivicSpark? CivicSpark is Governor Brown's initiative AmeriCorps program that launched in 2014. And we're now wrapping up the second service year and getting ready to launch into our third service year in October. CivicSpark fellows provide targeted support for 11 months, with 48 fellows focusing on building local government capacity to address climate change, and 20 fellows part of our new CivicSpark water expansion focusing on water management issues. The program is managed by LGC in partnership with OPR. And speaking of OPR, we're excited to have Michael McCormack here with us to provide a few welcoming remarks. Thank you, Michael, for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm very excited to be with this latest cohort of CivicSpark members. A number of years ago, when Governor Brown was just coming into office, we at OPR sat down after having a number of meetings around the state with local governments, trying to understand where the gaps were and the capacity needs were. And we sat down with California Volunteers, who runs AmeriCorps in California, and asked them what we could do in the form of a program to support the work local governments were doing on energy, climate change, water, etc. We were really excited to find out about a Governor's Initiative program, which responds to the priorities of the governor in place at that point. It's an initiative that every state has, and this particular governor chose to use it for supporting local governments and the work they're doing on climate, energy, and water. So we are really happy to be partnered with the Local Government Commission on this and feel that it's really helping to push the dialogue forward between the work the state's doing on high-level goals and policies on these issues, and also how local governments are tackling some of these issues at the local level. And to that note, I just wanted to highlight a program that we're launching at OPR to leverage the CivicSpark program, and it's called the Best Practices Pilot Program, BP3 for short. And we do like our acronyms at OPR and in the planning world. So BP3 is really intended to highlight cutting-edge work happening in local governments around the state. We decided to use the CivicSpark program to highlight this work because we have this fantastic conduit between our AmeriCorps members working at the local level and state policymakers working at the state level. We're able to have a dialogue back and forth, understand limitations and opportunities that are happening at the local level on these policy issues, and likewise, we're able to talk about constraints, but also changes that could be made at the state level to address these really important issues. So stay tuned to the OPR email list if you're not on that. opr.ca.gov is our website. There's an email list button in the top right-hand column. Please do click on that and sign up for the list, and we'll be sharing some more information as opportunities become available. So that being said, I'll hand it back to Julia. Really appreciate this, and look forward to hearing the conversation today.
Great. Thanks, Michael. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Bree, Mackenzie, and Meg, who will be sharing about their project with the Southern California Association of Governments. A Southern California native graduated from Washington University in St. Louis with a major in anthropology and a focus on global health and environment. She has worked on renewable energy policy, energy efficiency, environmental justice, and land use policy in St. Louis, DC, and Los Angeles. She became a CivicSpark Fellow to gain more hands-on experience in sustainability policy and to use her passion for environmental sustainability in her hometown. We also have Mackenzie Bolger, who is committed to the development of a socially just and environmentally healthy Southern California that will aid in the fight against climate change and model sustainability for the rest of the world. She recently graduated from Arizona State University with a BS in Justice Studies and a minor in Sustainability. CivicSpark was an exciting next step for Mackenzie to explore what the sustainability career field has to offer. And finally, we have Mike Kloha. San Diego native Mike Kloha attended the University of California, San Diego, and graduated with a degree in environmental policy and urban planning in 2014. From his education, he developed a keen interest for sustainable community planning and has spent much of his postgraduate career working in local government. He felt that CivicSpark aligned well with his career focus, which includes project management, policy research, and data analysis. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks so much, Julia. Hi, everybody. I'm Mackenzie. I'm Bree.
I'm Mike.
And we are the 3 CivicSpark Fellows that were placed at the Southern California Association of Governments to work on the Green Region Initiative Sustainability Indicators Project. So a little bit about the Southern California Association of Governments for those of you who might not know about it. It's, among other things, a council of governments, and it's the largest metropolitan planning organization in the country. Every 4 years, SCAG develops a regional transportation plan and sustainable community strategy, the most recent of which was adopted just earlier this year. The RTP-SCS works on developing a blueprint or a vision for what SCAG wants the region to look like for the next decades. SCAG is also a regional partner with the CivicSpark program, and over the last 2 years that the CivicSpark program has been around, the Sustainability Department has hosted 3 fellows each year.
So SCAG is the largest MPO for a number of reasons. For one, it covers 6 counties, which include Los Angeles, Orange, Riverside, San Bernardino, Ventura, and Imperial. These counties contain 191 cities spanning about 38,000 square miles while hosting more than 18 million residents, which is almost half the state's population.
So the purpose of our project is to define and measure sustainability progress and then visualize this progress in the region. We defined and measured progress through our metric reports and charts and made this progress accessible through our map and fact sheet. Internal to SCAG, our data has been used to inform presentations and projects, and in the Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Grant Technical Assistance Pilot Program with SCAG and the Strategic Growth Council. And externally, our data is intended to assist city staff, planners, consultants, and anyone else interested in viewing sustainability progress in the region. So a little bit of background. Our project is part of a larger Sustainability Department Green Region Initiative program, which aims to increase sustainability planning throughout Southern California. And there are basically 2 facets to this. One is to evaluate sustainability progress throughout the region, and then the other is to use that information to further progress, for example, through awards and grants. A few years ago, SCAG started tracking the existence of plans and programs in the region in order to evaluate sustainability progress. And we were tasked with starting to really evaluate the quality of those plans and programs.
We measured this progress by examining 25 separate sustainability indicators, which span a range of topics in sustainability, including climate action planning, renewable energy, and water conservation. Through the lens of these indicators, we were able to assess all 197 local governments in the SCAG region by using certain metrics for each indicator. We determined that showing initiative through policy and actual on-the-ground performance can differ greatly in terms of quality, which is why we chose to measure policy and performance separately.
So in order to measure jurisdictions uniformly across the region and consistently year to year, we developed policy and performance metrics for each of the 25 topics. So at the bottom of the page is an example of a metric report. And the metric reports outline the process for measuring policy and performance, and also clarify why we chose the metrics we chose, and provide a framework which includes metrics that could ideally be included in the future. Here's a sample of our metrics. The top one is for evaluating policy, and the bottom one is for evaluating performance. Indicator 1 at the top measures policy. As you can see, we used a 4-color system to evaluate which stage of progress a jurisdiction's policies or programs fall into. Each jurisdiction is then categorized into one of these 4 colors: white, light green, medium green, or dark green. Indicator 2 describes how we will measure performance. This is an example of an interim metric. So this is a metric that can be used with data that's currently widely available. And these are the 4 colors denoting the stages of sustainability progress. So all jurisdictions fall into one of these categories for each topic. The colors range from white, in which a city has taken little or no action but has a lot of opportunity to do so, to dark green, which represents a city that has excelled and can act as a model for other cities.
So we took those metrics that we developed and we started actually using them to track sustainability progress in the region. What you're seeing here is a chart where we collected all that data. This is a policy chart, so we are also in the process still of collecting performance data, and a new iteration of the chart will include performance data. But basically, I know it's really small, but you can see that on the left-hand side, there are the 25 sustainability topics, and on the top there are the 197 jurisdictions. So this is just a screenshot of the chart, so it's much bigger than what you see right there. And you can look at any jurisdiction, cross-section with any topic, and see what color category their sustainability policies fall under. When we were developing these metrics and collecting this data, there were a few things that we kind of noticed. One was that there is a lot of inconsistency in how jurisdictions measure and track sustainability progress and in what components they use to make things like climate action plans. And we think there's a real opportunity to create some sort of standard for making the plans and measuring and tracking progress, which will create more uniformity and make it easier for regional agencies like SCAG to track this data. We want to emphasize that the color categories aren't scores. They represent stages of a process, and we don't want to foster competition, we want to foster collaboration. So, for example, the white spaces, we don't want them, they're not negative things, they're places for opportunity. They're places where cities can really step up and do something in those regions. And one other note is that this data hasn't yet been corroborated by jurisdictions. We collected most of this data just online with whatever was available there. So we took all of the data we collected from that chart and put it into a map. So next week we're going to launch an interactive web-based map tool that basically will provide a different way than the chart of visualizing all of this sustainability progress data that we've collected. The map is supposed to act as a resource for cities, for the public, for SCAG staff, mostly just to create awareness about what is going on in the region. Where can cities improve? Where can they collaborate? Where can they find existing projects that they can replicate or even improve upon?
So this is the previous version of the map, the Green Region Initiative map. And so in this map, jurisdictions are measured by the number of adopted sustainability plans and programs. And then the available data includes only the number of policies the jurisdiction has adopted, and minimally the type of program or policy that's been adopted. But we don't get any idea of the quality of these programs or any access to the plans and program documents themselves.
So this is the updated version of the map. And for the updated version, we grouped all 25 sustainability indicators into broader categories, which are shown in the drop-down menu on the left. An example of how we group them is, like, for instance, active transportation contains the bikes, pedestrians, and complete streets indicators. And then if you click on the map, or if you click on a category, the map will populate with colors of each jurisdiction's progress for that category. Same will happen when you select individual indicators. And then in this slide, you can actually click on individual cities and counties to view their information for any particular indicator. And then also, as you can see on the right side of the screen, the 4 color categories that we discussed earlier are located in the legend. When an indicator is selected instead of a category, the legend will display the indicator-specific description for each color category rather than these general descriptions. And then for fact sheets, after researching and collecting data for all the sustainability indicators, we were able to create topic-specific fact sheets that will eventually be available on SCAG's website. In these fact sheets, we provide background information and regional statistics on particular sustainability topics, as well as highlight notable projects and best practices of work that is already being done by local governments in the region. We also listed various tools and resources to educate local governments and encourage them to use in attempting to implement their own sustainability programs.
Okay, so moving on to some of the notes that we've kind of collected over the course of this project. When we were collecting data, we also were tracking what kind of plans jurisdictions had in the SCAG region. And when you look at this data, it's kind of interesting. There's one thing in particular that jumped out to us, which is that over half of the community greenhouse gas inventories that exist don't have corresponding climate action plans. So there's some sort of gap between actually collecting the data and then using that data to inform policy.
So here are a few other things that we noticed while collecting data. In regard to energy efficiency, a lot of cities have taken some action and are making progress in this area, showing that it might be something that jurisdictions can easily address.
For parking management, we found that local governments in the region tend to use more traditional parking management practices, which focus on catering to the parking demand of residents and visitors, rather than taking a more progressive approach and trying to reduce the use of single occupancy vehicles.
In the water conservation indicator, we found that most cities are actually light green, which means that they have some sort of standard baseline policies, but they're not actually taking more action to try to encourage their jurisdiction to conserve water. That mostly falls to the water retail suppliers. Also, as far as electric vehicles go, though the state has big, lofty goals for electric vehicle expansion, that's not really being translated down to the local level. There's not that much going on yet with electric vehicle policy.
And in regard to farmlands, many cities are taking little or no action, and while most jurisdictions don't have any farmland, more often than not in those that do, these farmlands are being lost to development. So these are some examples of challenges we've faced and strategies for dealing with them. Most of these challenges we've discussed somewhat already. So one issue was the potential disconnect between the intention of policy and the on-the-ground performance. To deal with this, we measured policy and performance separately. And also, some of our metrics consider staff presence in the dark green category because it's the staff resources that ensure the longevity of policies and programs. Another issue is the lack of consistency among jurisdictions and statewide regarding measurements and metrics. To resolve this, we looked for metrics that were the common denominator among jurisdictions, measured with those, and then encourage in our metric reports the use of more ideal metrics when that data becomes available or more common. We also found that the type of programs and plans differ among jurisdictions also. So again, we looked for the common components and determined on a case-by-case basis what type of plan a jurisdiction had adopted. And finally, when it comes to regional collaboration, there are a few pros and cons. Action by COGs and sub-regional entities has proven to be very useful for cities to make progress in sustainability when they might not have otherwise had the resources. However, we were attempting to measure jurisdiction-specific action, so we had to determine whether jurisdiction was taking the action or if they were simply relying on the COG.
So in terms of next steps, like we said earlier, we plan to launch the sustainability indicators map by next week. Following the launch, we will begin hosting trainings and presentations for SCAG staff and local planners to essentially teach them more about the functionality and uses of the map moving forward. Then we will be showcasing the map at the California Adaptation Forum Tool Salon, which takes place in early September. And since our service year will be coming to a close in about a month, the next steps for incoming CivicSpark fellows will be to continue collecting performance data and updating the map, coordinating further outreach with local governments in the region, and then to continue analyzing the indicator data to continue improving the metrics.
So we'll now be answering any questions. If you have questions at a later time, please email us at the email below, which is scaggreenregion@scag.ca.gov. And we will also follow up to all participants of the webinar with a link of the map when it's live.
Great, thanks everyone. I don't see any questions yet. We'll give another minute or another few seconds to see if anyone has any questions. Again, you can submit the questions through the feature in the webinar control panel. And like they mentioned, if you have questions at a later point, feel free to email them. One quick question is, where can folks find the map once it's released next week?
So you'll be able to find the map on SCAG's website. We don't know. It'll be in the sustainability department section of the website.
Another question is SCAG, do you know if SCAG is currently or planning to work with other regions to share this resource or provide some guidance on how other regions can develop a similar map?
We have actually talked to ARB a couple times way earlier on in this project about something like that. There's another CivicSpark fellow up in the San Joaquin Valley who's doing something slightly different, but is working with a number of counties to track some sustainability data, mostly related to climate action plans. And we are hoping to kind of serve as a resource. There's a lot of things that we've learned going through this process that we hope maybe can help other COGs and the like collect data.
We also contributed some information through our research to OPR's recent release of the jurisdictions addressing climate change. So we are all open to collaborating.
Yeah, and there's also LA Metro. They're doing a similar sustainability indicators project. So we've talked with them, and so yeah, it's not just governments, but organizations also, and yeah.
And this is Michael McCormack from OPR, and I think that we're seeing a lot of value in representing data the local governments are providing on the work that they're doing. The matrix that we provide on climate change activities at the local level now has hyperlinks in it to the documents at each of the local governments that responded. And we are converting that into a data layer. So we're going to be working with the CivicSpark member, Joe, that's working with their resources board, and also going to be looking at the SCAG project as an example of what we might be able to do with that data layer. We don't anticipate it being quite as detailed as the SCAG data layer, but this certainly feeds into our thoughts on what kind of data is needed and what kind of information we can present so that our local partners have information to make decisions on.
Wonderful. A couple more questions. One quick one. Will the GIS layers be available for each of the parameters?
We have not discussed that possibility yet. If someone wants to email the email, that is, if they want some of the data layers, we can work on potentially making that accessible. The map will be updated relatively frequently, so that might make it a little bit difficult.
Wonderful. And just one more question. Do you know if this map will be used, or essentially just your sustainability indicators, to create incentives and potentially penalties for local governments within the SCAG region to adopt certain policies or to accelerate action?
Like we kind of mentioned earlier, we're not trying to, this I guess shouldn't be seen as like competition or punishment for like any city. It's intended entirely as a collaborative resource. So we don't want local governments or, to be punished in any way for maybe not doing something, but it's more to get cities that are, similar to connect with one another and try and implement policies and programs and just fostering collaboration.
Yeah, and the way it can also be used is to help like consultants and nonprofits and SCAG ourselves identify what cities need our help. What cities are currently white in a certain topic. So there it could potentially be used.
Additionally, we developed all the metrics ourselves. We did a lot of research, but none of them are like in partnership with an organization that would be, concerned with tracking whether someone is like doing the right thing or correctly. So we're not like, there isn't any way really to like.
This definitely wouldn't be at the point where you could really say this jurisdiction is doing poorly and this jurisdiction as well, and so we should reward this one and not reward this one.
Yeah.
Right.
The data's not there.
It's not, yeah.
Great. We do have a few more questions, but I think that's all the time that we have. I'll be passing on the questions that we weren't able to get to Bree, Mackenzie, and Mike, and they'll be able to follow up directly with each of you. Thank you all. That was clearly really impressive, and I think the entire state has a lot to learn from this project. And next up we have the Water LA team. We have Grant, Kelly, and Jennifer, who will be sharing about their work with Water LA and the River Project. Grant was born and raised in Dallas, Texas. He moved to California where he pursued a degree from UCLA in Geography and Environmental Studies with a minor in Urban and Regional Planning. Since moving to California, Grant has worked for Tesla Motors and helped support a variety of nonprofits in sustainable development. In the future, Grant hopes to pursue a master's degree in urban planning or urban design. His primary interests are smart growth, transportation, and ecosystem revitalization. We also have Kelly, who's a recent graduate of Santa Clara University with a BS in Environmental Studies. Growing up in Redondo Beach, her love of the ocean and its changing ecosystems fueled her passion for preserving the environment and promoting sustainable living. CivicSpark was a perfect opportunity for Kelly to gain more insight into and experience what it would be like to work within local government. She intends to stay within the sustainability field and work within local governments or organizations on how to lessen their environmental impact. And lastly, we have Jennifer, originally from Garden Grove, California. Jennifer Trong graduated from UCLA with a BS in Environmental Science and a minor in Conservation Biology in 2015. Prior to joining CivicSpark, she worked as a GIS intern for the Parks Department in Orange County. She's passionate about protecting local wildlife from climate change impacts and hopes to pursue a graduate degree to receive a master's in ecology in the future. Thanks, Grant, Kelly, and Jennifer for being with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks guys for listening in. So our project is just falling under the term of Water LA. So basically, Water LA is a community-based collaborative organization formed under the nonprofit The River Project, and it's based in the Los Angeles area, and it focuses on building capacity for communities to become more climate resilient and more specifically working in disadvantaged and climate vulnerable communities.
This is Jennifer. So the flagship program of Water LA is basically a pilot project that was implemented between the years of 2012 to 2014. We retrofitted over 22 single-family residential homes in Panorama City with best management practices that capture and infiltrate stormwater on site. And those BMPs are parkway basins, infiltration trenches, rain gardens, greywater systems, permeable parkways, and rain tanks. If you have any questions about any of those, we can answer them later. And this is part of a process that we like to call urban acupuncture, which is which basically just means that even though we're implementing BMPs in areas that are smaller than commercial or public places, which are usually where BMPs are implemented, a lot of the land use in the city of LA is residential, and if we implement these BMPs on residential properties, they can make a bigger impact in the long term.
Exactly. So these retrofits on a countywide scale are very important. Right now, the way water works in the state, or at least in the county, 90% of it, the stormwater that we get, it gets dumped into the ocean. So these retrofits, which we mentioned, are imperative to stormwater capture and basically getting this water back into the aquifer. So this project, our total beneficiaries were the City of Los Angeles Mayor's Office, the Department of Public Works with the county, and the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and lastly, the Department of
So Los Angeles Bureau of Sanitation, or LASAN for short, they have several goals. They aim to protect the beneficial uses of receiving waters while complying with flood control and pollution abandonment mandates. And they also work to ensure that the City of LA is in compliance with regulations and reducing pollution flowing into and through regional waterways, and some of those regulations include the Federal Clean Water Act. Our project for LASAN is a document that explains the various procedures for community-based BMP maintenance, which basically just means having a variety of community members involved in maintaining these BMPs. And the goal of this document is to have the LASAN staff understand better how parcel-scale urban acupuncture projects can advance the goals of the Upper LA River Enhanced Watershed Management Plan, which they had a part of. So as a part of this project, we focused on mulch, which basically because of its ability to maintain moisture in soil, it's often stressed as a water conservation strategy. So we interviewed 7 local government agencies and 2 nonprofit organizations throughout the LA area and the state. These cities include the city of Long Beach, Pasadena, Arcadia, and the city of Petaluma. And we interviewed them just to see what their experience was in delivering mulch to their residents. Successes were that it was high demand. Challenges were obviously staffing and funding their mulch supply programs. And another thing we did was we also delivered a mulch program feedback survey to several community members around LA County about their end user experience with these programs. Only a few of them had mulch programs in their cities, and only 29% of them say that they are somewhat effective in meeting city water conservation goals. Some of them, 40% of them say that they are effective in reducing their personal outdoor water use, which is important as the main reason for mulch is water conservation. And 57% say that they are aware that mulch helps with reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is important because there have been academic studies that show mulch do help with reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but that has not been properly studied or looked upon very often by local governments. And as a result, the information we received was incorporated into the proposal that we wrote for LASAN. The Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, LADWP for short, is our municipal utility agency, and because they're so big, they are split into different departments. One of them is watershed. So LADWP published the Stormwater Capture Master Plan in 2015, which overlays projects and strategies to increase local water supply in LA and decreasing LA's reliance on imported water. Our project for LADWP is a roadmap for getting to scale with urban acupuncture, which is basically how do we get what we have done in Panorama City to the entire city of LA. And the goal of this roadmap is to help the DWP staff understand how parcel scale projects and programs like Water LA can advance the goals of the storm water capture master plan. Okay. As a part of this roadmap, we came up with specific recommendations for bringing the Water LA program to scale, to a citywide scale. And we found some recommended priority areas for investment. One is a coordinated education and outreach program, which is kind of what LADWP has already started with, having a native plant database and an online guide for watering plants. Expanding city knowledge, city staff knowledge and training. The Water LA web tool, which we will talk about later in the presentation, and workforce training and development.
Okay, so with regards to LADWP conservation, one of the main goals for this project was for the staff to receive technical training on the Water LA web tool, which is what Jen just mentioned. So the Water LA web tool is basically what it sounds like. It's a web-based GIS online tool. Basically, it makes it so that residents can easily perform their own site assessments. And basically what a site assessment is looking at different aspects of your property, such as soil type, you know, how your water flows off of your roof, and to determine what BMPs will work for your property, because not all BMPs will work for every property. So this is one of the hardest steps to retrofitting a property. So the web tool is a big part of making it easier for residents to retrofit their homes. So the project description was basically developing a document outlining the web tool's utility and identifying next steps towards its implementation. And again, the goals are similar to LA Sands's, to have it so that the commissioners understand how these parcel scale projects can advance the goals of Stormwater Capture Master Plan and the Enhanced Water Management Plan and other policies that they've put in place. So unfortunately, the web tool did happen to stall out during our service year in the development due to logistical and financial setbacks. However, the River Project and LADWP are committed to the project and to further progressing it. It's just going to progress a tad slower, and unfortunately will not be finished prior to our service year ending. However, we have still included it in our final report and are recommending further steps for its progression and how it can help advance LA's water goals. So another beneficiary that we had was the Los Angeles Mayor's Office, and the LA Mayor's Office played the main role in developing LA City's first sustainability plan, and it was developed in April of 2015, and it includes short-term goals that LA hopes to achieve by 2017 and long-term ones to achieve by 2025 and 2035, and it covers 14 different areas of climate change, and so water happens to be a big part of those. And so the project description for the Mayor's Office was to develop and establish the Water LA Collaborative. So the Water LA Collaborative is a coalition of 6 local nonprofit organizations working together to increase the region's water and climate resilience. And just real quick, those organizations are Heal the Bay, LA Waterkeeper, Theodore Payne Foundation, the River Project, Northeast Trees, and Greywater Action. Very prominent environmental nonprofits down here in the LA region, with all very similar missions, hoping to achieve climate and water resilience. And so we completed phase 1 over 5 meetings, which basically laid the foundation, which I'll talk about in a second. And the bigger goals of the project are to show agency officials at the Mayor's Office how collaboration between local organizations advance the region's climate change and water conservation goals faster instead of working separately on such a large issue. So over the course of 5 meetings, we completed 4 deliverables, which were a mission statement document, which basically lays out the values of the collaborative and the goals for the collaborative and how it's going to achieve those. And secondly is a geographic partner database, complete with a map. So basically a base of over a couple hundred organizations that the collaborative could partner with. And Grant's going to talk about the map for a little bit real quick.
So the map was used, was developed using a WebGIS API with Google Maps. And essentially we just got all the collaborative members together, and these core collaborative members were able to do an analysis to find out what kind of partners in LA County would be sufficient to work with for stormwater capture. These partners, we ended up identifying over 200 partners in LA County, and we broke down organization types by their type, and we basically had 10 organization types, which included environmental nonprofits, community benefit organizations, green businesses, collaborative organizations, environmental justice organizations, and labor and workforce development. So essentially, this map is going to be in partnership with the Los Angeles Mayor's Office, and going forward in the future, they can rely on these partners to assess stormwater management better.
And so the final two were a development of a communications and public relations protocol and a draft set of agreements, which resulted in the form of a memorandum of understanding, basically just laying out you know, a lot of foundational internal policies and things like that for phase two, which phase two is in the process of applying for funding for a grant. And basically phase two will dive deeper into what phase one accomplished. So establishing collaborative as a separate legal entity, maybe a joint program, discussing a possible pilot project, and also funding sources for the future.
So the final deliverable that we had was with the Los Angeles County Department of Public Works. And essentially this included a technical memo which assessed water rates of capture, water quality, and mitigating local flooding. This essentially was related to the Panorama City project over the last 5 years. And my work was working with local hydrologists in the County Department of Public Works to better assess BMPs and how effective they were in capturing stormwater. Our findings found that the Water LA project captures over 4 acre-feet during a 85th percentile storm, and it also meets standard LID capture rates for water quality, mitigating pollutants such as zinc and whatnot, and also mitigating local flooding. So as the technical memo was developed, we did find a few points of concern. There was we were missing financial data for the project, but also other hydrologic metrics were excluded. So ultimately, the BMP analysis should help the county in better assessing low impact development and going forward into a countywide program. There was another point that we were concerned with, which was soil data. Right now, the county's hydrological analysis relies on state soil samples, which are essentially incompatible with current BMP projects. They assume that infiltration rates are a lot lower when they're actually a lot higher. For instance, when we establish mulch into the project, which is essentially ground up tree matter, it actually helps with infiltration rates. And it's something that we're hoping that that data will actually, going forward on a county level, we'll see that those infiltration rates are actually better and can be expanded.
So just some best practices that we, now that we're reflecting back on our year, that we noticed. So first, collaboration with Water LA team on all project aspects. So generally that means there's 3 fellows, 3 of us that worked on this project throughout this year. And as we went on, we learned it's better to collaborate with each other instead of single-handedly trying to tackle a huge issue, especially when it came down to us working on a report together. So we really learned to just check in with each other, even if we weren't all together, just have some weekly meetings and so that we could keep our projects rolling and complete them efficiently. And then also at the beginning of the year, reviewing background policies, research studies, and pilot projects with specific context to the LA area, because as we learned, water is a very complicated issue. And so reviewing all those policies and studies really helped us to further comprehend other issues that we came along throughout our year.
Another best practice we learned is utilizing the SV website for assistance with GIS, or basically just asking anyone for help, or any GIS expert for help, or any resources for GIS, because Grant and I both had issues with GIS throughout this entire year, despite us taking GIS classes during our college years, and I'm sure there are a couple of CivicSpark fellows out there who do feel the same way about GIS too, so always ask for help when it comes to GIS. That's very important. And another best practice I learned while distributing the Mulch program feedback survey to the LA County residents was that it's better to use SurveyMonkey instead of Google Forms, because I originally created a survey using Google Forms, but because of its technical limits and the way the survey is set up, it became difficult for me to manage all the data I received from the administrative side. So SurveyMonkey has more flexibility with formatting and structuring surveys, so I would recommend that. Yeah.
Just the last few points. The collaborative map which we created, we found is basically it's a really essential tool, and we're hoping that the LA Mayor's Office will adopt it wholesale. Really, because it's got so many organizations in it, and it's an essential tool to getting the word out for stormwater capture. And lastly, we want to build stronger relationships with city engineers and hydrologists so that we can develop better watershed research. I mean, there's a lot of points. I mentioned the soil data and biota and soil. There's a lot of points that are just coming out in the field, and the county hasn't fully adopted all of these. So working closely more with engineers and hydrologists is definitely a best practice.
So that concludes. So if you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to answer a couple.
Great, thanks all. I think we have time for just one question, and there's one that just came in. It's great to see that organizations and agencies are collaborating within the LA region. Are there any collaborative efforts that you know of between LA and maybe some upstream communities, like maybe the Sierra region?
Not that we know of, actually. I imagine that LA is looking to always be a leader when it comes to climate policy and everything. So I imagine that they are looking towards other communities to build off of what they have already done, so progress off of their policies. But we don't know of any official collaboration. We haven't learned any in our year.
And I think with when you're dealing with metropolitan water like LADWP, it's pretty it stays within the county, so I don't think that it really goes outside much in terms of state water. I mean, obviously the state water comes down through the Department of Water and Power, but I think, for instance, Arya's project, which you'll hear about next, I think it might have some linkages there. But
yeah, great. Well, thanks, Kelly, Grant, and Jennifer. And for those of you all out there, keep those questions coming. We'll make sure they get answered after the webinar closes. And we do have one last CivicSpark fellow who will be presenting. We had some technical difficulties at first. We didn't know if he would be able to join, but we're thrilled that he'll be able to. And what's a webinar without at least one technical difficulty? It's my pleasure to introduce Arya, who will be sharing his work about his work with the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority and the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. Arya holds a master's degree in city planning and regeneration from the University of Glasgow in the United Kingdom, and a bachelor's degree in international studies with a minor in French from the University of California, Irvine. He is from Southern California and has lived, studied, and worked in France, the United Kingdom, and Canada. Along with his international experience, he has worked with community-based nonprofit groups and city planning departments. He is also a member of the American Society of Adaptation and is working towards gaining LEED certification. Arya, thanks so much for joining us. One super quick note, it looks like you're using a dual screen. If you wanted to, in the screen sharing panel of the control panel, you can toggle that, toggle from screen 1 to 2, but that's totally up to you. We can see your presentation.
Hi, Julia. Thank you for pointing that out. Let me see what I can do with this.
Sorry, I didn't mean to throw you off.
Let's see. Sorry about that. I do apologize. Okay. Does that help fix anything?
It's not a problem. Go ahead and start the presentation. We could see it great.
Okay. Perfect. Well, hello everyone. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you about what I've been doing this past year through CivicSpark. So my name is Arya, and I am working at 2 water agencies towards water resiliency in Southern California. So in this little presentation, I'm going to go over the 2 agencies that I work with right now, which are the Inland Empire Utilities Agency and also the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. And I'm happy to go over some of the roles and also some of the challenges that I've overcome this past year with these 2 agencies. So excitingly with this past year, I have really appreciated the fact that I've been able to work from a regional level down to a community level as well. The programs that I have worked with have been really expansive in their breadth and in their scope. And so the first agency is the Inland Empire Utilities Agency, the IEUA. It is the wholesale distributor of imported water to western San Bernardino County. It's also a regional wastewater treatment agency. This agency spans over 242 square miles, serves over 830,000 people. And with this agency, I've been helping them out with the planning departments. And so what that means is I have been helping to contribute to a few planning documents. The 2 most important ones really are the Urban Water Management Plan and the Integrated Resources Plan. These 2 documents are really the flagship planning documents for the region. They really set the direction and also are really influential for the planning agency itself, and also the water agencies that make up the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. So the IEUA, they are the water wholesaler for 7 water agencies in western San Bernardino County. And then also the Integrated Resources Plan. This is actually a really novel, exciting document for the agency. It is the first 20-year planning document that outlines resiliency, resilient planning for climate change impacts all the way through 2040 for the region. And also right now, we are working on a grant strategic plan, which is a way to really get the planning department more in touch with the grants department and also other departments to make sure that the best opportunities are being presented and being tackled. The stormwater capture plan is the agency's approach to really trying to answer how to implement low impact development with their specific projects, and also to influence it in the region as well. And also the Sustainable Water Management Profile. This is a pilot project that is being led by the California Water Foundation. And essentially for this, IEUA is allowing itself to be assessed in terms of how well it manages water. Ideally, the California Water Foundation sees this program as a way to kind of create a sort of LEED certification, but for water agencies, to really assess what they're doing and how well they're doing it. And so with these agencies, so with IEUA, I have been really helping out with the writing and the content production for these reports. So lots of research, is a whole lot of reading, and really gaining familiarity with existing planning documents within the agency, and also planning documents for the region as well. I have initiated the agency's plan to a stormwater capture plan. So for them, it is a brand new plan that they're working on. And so working with Liz Hurst here at IEUA, it has been a challenge to really assess what role IEUA can play with this, and also how to really build upon what has already been or what has already been researched, what has already been done in the region and also the nation. There's been a huge project management role here at IEUA, and so this works with managing documents to satisfy the needs for the California Water Foundation in their assessment for the Sustainable Water Management Profile. Also managing projects and schedules for the Integrated Resources Plan, the IRP. A huge aspect of that was to find to calculate water use factors based on land use. And so with that, the agency had to work really closely with the city planning departments for the cities within the region. And so in that capacity, I was really helping out to arrange to arrange meetings between the planning department directors and also the IEUA planning department to really find out what was happening on the land, what was happening with the cities, what were the cities' forecasts, and IEUA was using that to figure out what water demand expectations that they should have. In terms of preparation, there was much document preparation and preparation and editing for the reports. The Urban Water Management Plan and also the Integrated Resources Plan, they were finished this past year. And so both documents, they are available on the IEUA website. And also integration. And with that, it was really a challenge to integrate with a brand new agency and to really kind of get on their wavelength. Much of what I was doing at IEUA was joining works already in progress. For example, the IRP had been in the works for the past 2 or 3 years. And so the partners with whom I worked at IEUA, they were very well versed in what strategies and what was already out there. And so it definitely was a challenge to jump in and to really be a beneficial contribution to the team. And so that definitely was a challenge that ultimately was really successful. I really appreciate the support that I received from the team. And kind of building upon what was said in the last presentation, a huge aspect of success is really reaching out to the team and working with the team to make sure that you're on the same wavelength, to make sure that you are really ready to follow and understand what's happening. And so with that, the collaboration aspect was hugely important at IEUA. Separately, I was also at the Santa Ana Watershed Project Authority. And so with them, they are actually the only agency in the United States that manages an entire watershed. And that was really a fascinating thing to learn. And so with them, they are a really impressive agency for that, and also for their forward thinking, especially in terms of collaboration. They have a document called the One Water, One Watershed Plan, and this is their integrated water management plan, which really outlines the emphasis that they put on collaboration between the agency itself with water agencies, but also with community agencies, tribal networks, community groups, really there is a huge focus on making sure that everyone has a voice in the planning process for the Santa Ana River watershed. And just so you know, SAPA, the service area covers, it's humongous, over 2,800 square miles, spans 4 counties, 63 cities, and it's home to over 6 million people. And so with them, I have been helping out with the Water Energy Community Action Network, WECAN. And so WECAN, it's a program designed to support overburdened communities within the watershed to save water and energy. It's actually the sister program to the WECAN program in Fresno, California. The way the WECAN program works with SAPA, it's a little bit different though. WECAN for SAPA is a 2-part program. One part is a fixture replacement program, and the other part is a lawn replacement program. And what's really exciting with this is that this is a program, firstly, it's novel for a watershed agency because it works at the community level, which typically SAPA doesn't do very often. They typically deal more with water wholesalers or even water agencies. So there's that aspect of it. And also the fact that it is designed to be offered to residents for 0 cost. And this was a huge push by the agency to really create an alternative to the typical rebate program, especially for overburdened communities, understanding that a rebate program may not be the most readily accessible for all community members. And so with the WECAN program, I worked with Mike Antos, who is the watershed manager at SAPA, to really project manage, to work at his side to really coordinate with the several partners. I believe there were 9 partners for the WECAN program. And also there was the logistics of preparing necessary documents, including certain CEQA documents, including certain documents to translate to the project partners. I also designed most of the outreach materials for the WECAN program, and so this was materials that were presented to the water agencies and also to the consultant partners to really make sure that everything was on message and there was a consistent theme for the entire program. Along with that, I did develop a training session for the consultants for the program. And this was really, again, to make sure that everyone was on the same page, to make sure that everyone really understood their role with the program. And because really it's a really complex and far-reaching program. There are a lot of moving parts and a lot of different players. And so what Mike really wanted to stress with my help was to keep everyone really on the same page, to make sure that each participant, each partner really understood what the program is in its entirety, and also to make sure that they were able to really promote it as such. Yeah, on top of that, I also presented a poster outlining the WECAN program at the SEEC Forum, the Statewide Energy Efficiency Collaboration Forum in Riverside, California. And so throughout this past year, while working at SAPA, a huge challenge really was firstly gaining a strong sense of familiarity with the program. Like I said, it is a really complex program with a lot of different partners who had very specific roles, and really understanding what specifically their roles were and are, how to help them in those roles, and also to make sure that everyone fully understood what their roles were in comparison to other people, to other partners' roles. That was a huge challenge. And also being able to work with new software programs. For example, I gained a strong familiarity with Adobe Illustrator as a result of this program, before which I had very little access or introduction. And so kind of just being thrown into that position really forced you to gain a strong sense of how to do it, what to do. But yeah, all in all, it was a really strong, very fruitful year. to be honest. And so that was really my my experience with both IEUA and SAPA. And yeah, so it really has been very exciting. I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have for either of those water agencies.
Great, thanks so much, Arya. I think that is going to be all the time that we have for this webinar. Folks, if you have questions for Arya, for any of our fellows, please feel free to type them into the question box now, and we can make sure they get answered after the webinar, or you can reach out to anyone directly. I've included everyone's email addresses right here on this page. And yeah, thank you for joining us, and special thanks to all of our Rockin' CivicSpark fellows for all the great work that they've done to accelerate climate action in the Southern California region. And if you're interested in learning more about their projects in depth, again, please feel free to reach out to them. If you're interested in learning more about the CivicSpark program, please feel free to reach out to me or Michael, or you can visit us online at civicspark.lgc.org. And that concludes this webinar. All presentations and the webinar recording will be posted online and shared with you individually, as will answers to the questions that we didn't have time to get to. Thanks again, everyone. Have a great day.